After my son bought me a vacation ticket and drove me to the airport, he began acting strangely before rushing off in a panic. Just as I was about to board the plane, a stranger grabbed my arm and warned me, "Sir, don't get on that flight, your life is in danger." What he revealed next sent chills down my spine. I uncovered a horrifying truth about my own family, and now I had to devise a plan to save myself from the very people I loved most in this world. Hello everyone, and welcome. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Wishing you a wonderful day. Quick reminder, this is a fictional story with dramatized details for emotional impact. Any similarities to real events are coincidental, but the lessons are deeply meaningful. Now let me reveal what that stranger showed me at the airport. My name is Henry Lawson, and I am 65 years old. I live alone now in a small cabin tucked into the forested hills of western Montana. The cabin sits on 3 acres of land surrounded by towering pines and Douglas firs. Most mornings I wake to the sound of elk moving through the trees outside my window. The air here is clean and sharp, the kind that fills your lungs and makes you feel alive. The sky stretches wide and endless, unmarked by city lights or the hum of traffic. It is peaceful here, quiet in a way I never thought I would need. But 2 years ago, I was living a very different life. Back then, I was 63 years old and still waking up every morning in the same house I had shared with my wife, Margaret, for over 3 decades. We bought that house together in 1987, the year we got married. It was a 2-story colonial in the Washington Park neighborhood of Denver, Colorado, white trim, a deep front porch, and a backyard bordered by a wooden fence that Margaret painted herself one summer when we were still in our 30s. She planted roses along that fence. Every spring she'd kneel in the dirt with her gardening gloves and her wide-brimmed sun hat, tucking bulbs into the soil beneath the kitchen window. Tulips, bright red ones that came back year after year, faithful as clockwork. Margaret loved that house. She loved Denver. She loved our life there. We had one son. His name is Derek. He was born in 1989, 2 years after we bought the house. Margaret used to say that Derek was the best thing we ever did together, and for a long time I believed that was true. Margaret and I were together for 35 years. We met when we were both 26 at a community fundraiser in Boulder. She was volunteering at the registration table, and I was there because my college roommate had dragged me along. I saw her laugh at something someone said, and I thought, I want to know that woman. 3 months later, we were engaged. A year after that, we were married. She wasn't just my wife. She was my best friend. She was the person I told everything to, the good days and the bad ones, the worries and the wins. She made every room in that house feel like home. The kitchen smelled like her bread on Sunday mornings. The living room still had the couch we'd bought together in 1995, worn soft in all the right places. The bedroom upstairs was ours, our sanctuary, our haven. And then, in October of 2021, Margaret passed away. It was breast cancer. The aggressive kind, the kind that moves faster than you can react. By the time the doctors caught it, it had already spread. We spent nearly $80,000 on treatments, chemotherapy, radiation, experimental therapies that insurance wouldn't cover. I would have spent every cent I had if it meant one more year with her, one more month, one more day. But it wasn't enough. She was 61 years old when she left me. We had been together for 35 years, more than half my life. The last few weeks we brought her home. We rented a hospital bed and set it up in our bedroom so she could spend her final days in the place we had shared for so long. The hospice nurse came every afternoon. Margaret's sister flew in from Arizona, and Derek, our son, came by almost every day. I remember one afternoon in late October. The light was soft and golden through the curtains. Margaret was awake but weak. Derek sat on the edge of the bed and held her hand. She looked at him with those clear, sharp eyes she'd always had, even when her body was failing. and she whispered, "Promise me you'll take care of your father when I'm gone." Derek's voice broke. He squeezed her hand and said, "I promise, Mom. I promise." She smiled. It was one of the last times I ever saw her smile. 3 days later, she was gone. After Margaret passed away, the house didn't feel like home anymore. I would walk from room to room and see her everywhere. Her reading glasses were still on the coffee table. Her cardigan was still draped over the back of the kitchen chair. The calendar on the wall was still marked in her handwriting, doctor's appointments, grocery lists, reminders to water the tulips. I couldn't bring myself to throw any of it away, so I just stayed. I went to the grocery store on Tuesdays. I mowed the lawn. I kept the tulips watered, even though it broke my heart every time I looked at them. But I was alone. Derek tried to help. He would swing by once a week, usually on Sundays, sometimes with his wife. Derek was 34 years old, then strong, confident, the kind of man any father would be proud of. He worked as a financial advisor in downtown Denver. He drove a nice car, lived in a modern condo up in the Highlands neighborhood. He seemed like he had everything figured out. His wife was 31. She was sharp, polished, always put together. She worked as a marketing director for a tech startup. The two of them made a good-looking couple, the kind you see in magazine ads for luxury cars or vacation resorts. They would come over, sit with me in the living room, ask how I was doing. Derek would tell me I needed to get out more, see people do things. His wife would nod along and smile. I appreciated it. I really did. I thought my son was trying to honor the promise he had made to his mother. I thought he cared. I thought I was lucky to still have family. I didn't know that everything was about to change. It started on an evening in early April, about a week before my life changed forever. Derek called me that afternoon and asked if he and his wife could come over for dinner. I said yes, of course. I was always happy to see my son, and if I'm being honest, I was lonely. The house felt too big, too quiet. Having people there even for just a few hours made it feel a little more like it used to. They arrived around 7. Derek was wearing a button-down shirt and jeans. His wife wore a sleek black dress and heels like she'd just come from a business meeting. She was carrying a small gift bag, the kind with tissue paper folded neatly at the top. I made pot roast for dinner, the same recipe Margaret used to make. It was one of the few dishes I could still get right. Derek ate 2 servings and told me it tasted just like Mom's. His wife smiled and said I should cook more often. After we cleared the dishes, Derek pulled a blue envelope out of his jacket pocket and slid it across the kitchen table. "Dad," he said, "we want to give you something." I looked at him confused. "Sir, what is this?" "Just open it," his wife said, leaning forward with that bright, practiced smile. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside were 3 airline boarding passes, business class tickets from Denver International Airport to Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Departure date April 15th. Return date April 22nd. I stared at them, not understanding. "We're all going," Derek said. His voice was warm, excited. "The 3 of us. A family trip." I looked up at him. My hands were shaking. "There's more," his wife added. She reached into the gift bag and pulled out a printed hotel confirmation. "We booked a 5-star hotel in the heart of Phnom Penh. 2 rooms, 1 for you, 1 for us. We'll be right next door." I couldn't speak. I just sat there staring at the tickets, the confirmation, the dates printed in neat black ink. Derek reached across the table and put his hand on mine. "Dad, we know how hard it's been. We thought, maybe it's time you got away. Saw something new. Mom always talked about traveling to Southeast Asia, remember?" I did remember. Margaret used to collect travel magazines, National Geographic Travel plus Leisure. She'd fold down the corners of pages with photos of Angkor Wat, floating markets, golden temples glowing in the sunrise. She'd say, Someday, Henry, someday we'll go. But someday never came. Now, sitting at that kitchen table holding those tickets, I felt something I hadn't felt in 18 months. Hope. A fragile, trembling kind of hope. His wife squeezed my hand. Her grip was firm, almost too firm. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You deserve this, Dad, after everything you've been through." I started to cry. I wasn't ashamed of it. I just sat there at the table where Margaret and I used to eat breakfast every morning, and I cried. Derek stood up and came around the table and wrapped his arms around me. "We're going to take care of you, Dad," he said. "I promise." And I believed him. Over the next week, I threw myself into preparing for the trip. I went to REI and bought new clothes, lightweight cargo pants, moisture-wicking shirts, a wide-brimmed hat to keep the sun off my face. I bought a travel backpack, a portable phone charger, a money belt to keep my passport safe. The young woman at the checkout counter smiled and asked where I was going. When I told her Cambodia, she said, "That's amazing. You're going to love it." I went to the bookstore and bought a travel guide to Cambodia. It had glossy photos of ancient temples, bustling street markets, the Mekong River winding through the jungle. Every night, I'd sit at the kitchen table and flip through the pages, imagining the three of us walking through those places together. I pictured Derek pointing out landmarks, his wife taking photos, all of us sitting by the river with cold drinks, watching the boats drift by. I called my old friend Frank and told him about the trip. Frank had been my neighbor for 15 years before he moved to Boulder. He was one of the few people I still talked to regularly. "It's about damn time," Frank said, laughing. "Margaret wouldn't want you locked up in that house forever, Henry. She'd want you out there living." He was right. I knew he was right. But there were small things, details I didn't pay attention to at the time that should have made me stop and think. Derek came by twice more that week, supposedly to check on me and see if I needed help packing. Both times he seemed distracted. He'd sit on the couch with his phone in his hand, glancing at the screen every few seconds. His leg bounced. His jaw was tight. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd look up quickly and say, "Yeah, Dad, just work stuff. Don't worry about it." His wife was different. She was almost too enthusiastic. Every time she spoke, it felt like she was performing. She'd walk through the house and compliment the furniture, ask me how I was feeling, tell me how excited she was for the trip. But her eyes, there was something flat behind them. Something I couldn't quite name. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself I was just nervous about traveling for the first time since Margaret had passed away. I told myself that Derek and his wife were busy people with demanding jobs, and I was lucky, so lucky that they were taking a whole week off to travel with me. I didn't let myself question it. The night before the flight, I walked through the house one last time. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom Margaret and I had shared for 35 years. The room still smelled faintly of her perfume, lavender and vanilla. I whispered into the dark the way I used to when she was still here. "We're finally going to see the places you dreamed about, Margaret. All three of us." I went to bed that night, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement, anticipation, a fragile, cautious kind of joy. The morning finally came. I woke up at 4 a.m., my heart full of hope. Derek and his wife arrived at 4:30, right on time. I heard the car pull into the driveway, the low hum of the engine, the soft click of 2 doors closing. I was already standing by the front window with my suitcase and backpack, my passport tucked safely in the pocket of my jacket. I'd been awake for half an hour, too excited to sleep. I opened the door before they could knock. "Morning, Dad," Derek said. His voice was flat, almost mechanical. "Morning, son." I smiled at him, then I looked past him to his wife, who was standing a few steps behind on the porch. "Good morning," she nodded. "Morning, Dad." Her smile was tight, polite, and didn't reach her eyes. Derek reached for my suitcase and carried it to the trunk without a word. His wife followed him silently, her purse slung over her shoulder, her phone already in her hand. I locked the front door and climbed into the passenger seat. Derek slid into the driver's seat. His wife got into the back directly behind me. I glanced over my shoulder at her. You excited?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. But she was looking out the window, not at me. Derek started the engine and pulled out of the driveway. The sky was still dark. The streetlights cast long, pale shadows across the empty road. It was the kind of quiet you only get in the early morning before the city wakes up. I was full of energy, full of plans. I started talking almost immediately about the temples we'd visit, the food we'd try, the river tour I'd read about in the guidebook. I told them I wanted to see the royal palace and the silver pagoda. I wanted to walk through the Russian market and try the street noodles everyone raved about. I wanted to take a boat ride on the Mekong at sunset. Neither of them responded. Derek stared straight ahead at the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel. His wife sat in the back seat, silent. Her face turned toward the window. I glanced at Derek. "You okay, son?" "Yeah." His voice was tight. "Just tired." But he didn't look tired. He looked tense, wired, like he was holding something in. His phone buzzed, then it buzzed again. Derek glanced down at it, his face lit up by the glow of the screen. I saw his jaw clench. He didn't pick it up. His wife leaned forward slightly from the back seat. I couldn't see her face, but I heard her voice, low, controlled. "Derek." He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Something I didn't understand. Then Derek looked back at the road and tightened his grip on the wheel. The phone buzzed again. This time his wife reached forward and picked it up from the cup holder. She unlocked it, read the screen, then typed something quickly with her thumb. She set it back down without saying a word. "Work?" I asked. "Yeah," Derek said. He didn't look at me. "Just some last-minute stuff." I nodded, even though something about the whole exchange felt wrong. It was barely 5 in the morning. Who was texting him about work at this hour? And why was his wife answering his messages? I tried to push the thought away. I told myself they were just stressed. They had demanding jobs. They were taking a week off on short notice. Of course they'd be dealing with loose ends. We drove in silence for a while. The highway stretched out in front of us, empty and dark. The only lights were the amber glow of the street lamps sliding past us one by one. I looked over at Derek. His knuckles were white where he gripped the wheel. His shoulders were hunched forward. His jaw was locked tight. I tried to lighten the mood. "You know," I said, "this reminds me of when I taught you to drive. Remember, you were 16. We came out here on a Sunday morning, just like this, early, before the traffic started. You were so nervous you could barely get the car out of the driveway." Derek didn't say anything. "You stalled out 3 times before we even made it to the end of the block." I laughed softly. "Your mom was standing on the porch waving at us. She was so proud of you." Still nothing. I glanced back at his wife. She was staring out the window, her face expressionless, like she hadn't heard a word I'd said. I stopped talking. I looked out my own window and watched the dark shapes of buildings and trees blur past. Derek's phone buzzed again. This time he picked it up himself, unlocked. It read the message. His face went pale. He glanced at the rearview mirror at his wife. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. He set the phone down again, harder than he needed to. "Everything okay?" I asked quietly. "Fine," he snapped. Then more softly, "Sorry, Dad. I'm just dealing with some stuff. Don't worry about it." But I was worried. I couldn't help it. Something felt wrong. Derek's hands were shaking. His breathing was shallow. And his wife, she was too calm, too still, like she was waiting for something. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. By the time we reached Denver International Airport, the sky had started to lighten. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the horizon was tinged with pale blue and gray. The airport loomed ahead of us, massive, modern, with its distinctive white tent-like roof glowing softly in the early light. Derek pulled into the departures lane and parked near the terminal entrance. He turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, staring straight ahead, his hands still gripping the wheel. His wife opened her door first. She got out without a word, pulled her small carry-on from the trunk, and stood on the curb waiting. Derek finally opened his door. He popped the trunk and hauled out my suitcase. He moved fast, too fast. His movements were jerky, almost frantic. "You coming?" I asked. He nodded, but he didn't look at me. We walked into the terminal together, the three of us. Derek a few steps ahead, his wife beside him, me trailing behind with my suitcase. Inside, the air was cool and bright. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A few scattered travelers moved through the space, business people with rolling luggage, families with sleepy children, a couple of airline employees in uniform. We found the check-in counter for our flight. The line was short. Derek stood beside me, shifting his weight from foot to foot. His wife stood on his other side, arms crossed, staring at the departure board. His phone buzzed again. He pulled it out, read the message, then shoved it back into his pocket. His wife glanced at him. He shook his head slightly. We moved forward in line. When it was our turn, the woman behind the counter smiled at us and asked for our IDs and boarding passes. I handed mine over. Derek fumbled in his jacket pocket, pulled out his driver's license and set it on the counter. His hand was trembling so badly the plastic card rattled against the surface. We finished checking in and headed toward security. The TSA line was short. Derek walked ahead, his phone in his hand. His wife walked beside him, silent. I followed with my suitcase, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. We made it through security without incident. I collected my belongings, slipped my shoes back on, and looked for Derek and his wife. They were already moving toward the gates, not waiting for me. "Derek, wait up!" I called. He stopped but didn't turn around. His wife stopped beside him. I caught up. "You two okay?" "Yeah," Derek muttered. "Gates this way." We walked through the terminal in silence. A few early travelers moved past us. The overhead announcements echoed through the space. We reached Gate B23 at 6:45. The departure board displayed our flight. United Flight 1847 Denver DEN to San Francisco SFO, departure 8 a.m., boarding 7:30 a.m., status on time. I felt a flutter of excitement. In just over an hour, we'd be in the air. I found 3 seats near the window and sat down. Derek didn't sit. He paced back and forth, glancing at his phone every few seconds. His wife sat next to me, stiff and silent, staring straight ahead. "Everything okay?" I asked her. She turned to look at me. Something flickered in her eyes. Then she smiled, thin and tight. "Yes, Dad. Just tired." Derek kept pacing. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, jaw tightening. Then he glanced at his wife. She gave a barely perceptible nod. At 7:10, the gate agent's voice came over the speaker. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We will now begin boarding United Flight 1847 with service to San Francisco. We'd like to invite our first class and business class passengers to begin boarding." That was us. I stood up, reaching for my bag. "All right, let's go." Derek stopped pacing. He turned to face me, his face pale, his eyes red. He grabbed my hand. "Dad!" he said, his voice cracking. "I need to tell you something." My stomach dropped. "Oh, what is it?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at his wife. She stood up slowly and put her hand on his shoulder. We can't go, Derek said barely above a whisper. I stared at him. What? His wife stepped forward, her face calm. Something came up. At both of our jobs, emergency situations. We have to go back right now. I couldn't process it. What, Derek? That's insane. We've been planning this for a month. You took time off. You bought the tickets. What kind of emergency? I'm sorry, Dad. Derek's voice shook. You have to go. Please, just go. Enjoy the trip. We'll explain later. Explain what? My voice rose. People turned to look. Derek, what the hell is going on? He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the floor, hands trembling. His wife's grip tightened on his shoulder. We really do have to leave, she said firmly. Derek, talk to me, I pleaded. You're scaring me. He shook his head, jaw clenched. Then suddenly he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. It wasn't a normal hug. It was desperate. His whole body shook. I felt the tremor running through him. He leaned close and whispered, I love you, Dad. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. His wife grabbed his arm. Derek, she said sharply. We have to go. Now. Derek pulled away. His eyes were wet. His wife was already pulling him toward the exit. Derek! I shouted. Derek, wait! He didn't stop. They turned and walked away quickly, almost running side by side toward the terminal exit. I stood there frozen, watching them disappear. My boarding pass was in my hand. My heart pounded. My mind spun. What just happened? The gate agent's voice came again. Final boarding call for business class passengers on United Flight 1847. I looked down at the boarding pass. Seat 3A, the trip I'd been dreaming about. But I didn't want to go anymore. Not without my son. Not without understanding what had just happened. But what else could I do? The tickets were non-refundable. The hotel was paid for. Derek had begged me to go. Maybe it was a work emergency. Maybe he'd explain when I got back. I took a deep breath. I picked up my bag. I started walking toward the gate. The agent smiled. Good morning, sir. Boarding pass, please. I handed it to her. She scanned it, handed it back, gestured toward the jetway. Have a wonderful flight. I nodded. I took one step toward the door, and then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned around. A man stood behind me. Late 40s, graying hair, weathered face, jeans and flannel, steady eyes. He spoke quietly. Sir, he said. Please don't get on that plane. I stared at the man, confused, and more than a little bit angry. Excuse me, I said. Who are you? What are you talking about? The man didn't flinch. He kept his hand on my shoulder, steady and firm, and looked me straight in the eyes. He was maybe 48 years old, with short graying hair and a weathered face. He was wearing a blue flannel shirt and jeans, and there was something in his expression, something serious, urgent, that made me stop. My name is Raymond Foster, he said. His voice was low, calm, but there was an edge to it. Please don't get on that plane. I need to talk to you. Right now. I glanced past him at the gate. The agent was still calling for boarding. The jetway door was open. People were moving through it. I don't know you, I said. My voice came out sharper than I meant it to. Why would I? Because I just heard something I think you need to know about, Raymond said. He didn't raise his voice, but there was an intensity in his eyes that made my heart skip. Please, just give me 5 minutes. If you still want to get on that plane after I tell you what I heard, I won't stop you. But you need to hear this first." I hesitated. Every instinct in my body was telling me to walk away, to get on the plane, to follow Derek's instructions, and just go. But something about this man, something about the way he was looking at me, the steadiness in his voice made me pause. "5 minutes," I said finally. Raymond nodded. He gestured away from the gate. "Let's go somewhere we can talk." I followed him, my suitcase rolling behind me, my heart pounding. We walked past the gate, past the crowds of travelers until we reached a small Starbucks tucked into the corner of the terminal. Raymond led me to a table near the back, away from the line of people ordering coffee. We sat down. Raymond leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. He looked tired, like he'd been up all night, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "I'm flying to Seattle this morning," he said. "My gate is over in Concourse A. I was sitting there about half an hour ago, waiting for my flight, minding my own business. And then 2 people sat down just 2 seats away from me. A man and a woman. Young, maybe mid-30s. My stomach tightened. What did they look like? The man was tall, dark hair, wearing a blue jacket. The woman was dressed sharp black coat heels, brown hair pulled back. Derek. And his wife. They sat down close to each other. Raymond continued. The man pulled out his phone. He made a call. He kept his voice low, but not low enough. I was only 2 seats away. I heard him. "What did you hear?" My voice was barely a whisper. Raymond's face darkened. He took a breath like he was steadying himself. He said, "He's about to board the plane. I don't think I can do this." My chest tightened. There was a pause, Raymond said, like someone was talking on the other end. And then he said, I know it's too late." Another pause. Then he said, "Central Market, day 3. Make it look like a robbery." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. "No," I said. "No, that's not. You must have misheard. You must have—" "I didn't mishear," Raymond said quietly. I heard him clearly, and the woman sitting next to him, she wasn't on the phone, but she was listening. She leaned over and said something to him. I couldn't hear exactly what, but it sounded like, "It's already done. We can't stop it now." I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking. The man looked upset. Raymond continued. Like he was about to break down. But the woman, she was calm. Cold. She stood up, grabbed his arm, and they left together. I followed them. You followed them. I did. Raymond's jaw tightened. Because I've been around long enough to know what that kind of conversation means. I followed them to gate B23. I stayed back, watched from a distance. I saw them talking to an older man, someone who looked happy, excited. And then I saw them leave. Without him, they just walked away and left him standing there. My throat closed. I couldn't speak. "That older man was you," Raymond said. "Wasn't it?" I nodded slowly. I felt like I was going to be sick. Raymond leaned back in his chair. "I don't know who those people are to you, but I know what I heard. And I know that if you get on that plane, something very bad is going to happen to you in Cambodia." I shook my head, my voice breaking. That was my son. And his wife. They couldn't. "I'm not telling you what to believe," Raymond said. "I'm telling you what I heard. And there's one more thing." I looked up at him. "They mentioned money," Raymond said carefully. "A large sum of money. And something about life insurance." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. "Life insurance," I whispered. Raymond nodded. The man said something like, "It's a lot of money. We won't have to worry anymore." And the woman said, "Just make sure he gets on that plane." I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My son, my only child, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd taught to be honest and kind and good. He was planning something terrible. But I couldn't believe it. Not fully, not without proof. "I need to be sure," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to know this isn't some terrible mistake. Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe. Raymond said gently. "But are you willing to bet your life on that?" I needed to be certain this wasn't some horrible misunderstanding. I pulled my phone out of my pocket with shaking hands and stared at the screen. Raymond stood up from the table. "I'll give you some privacy," he said quietly. "But please make that call. Find out the truth." I looked up at him. "Thank you," I said. My voice was barely a whisper. "Thank you for stopping me." Raymond nodded. "I hope I'm wrong. I really do." He paused. "But if I'm not, you need to know." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of travelers moving through the terminal. I sat there alone at the Starbucks table, my phone in my hand, my heart pounding. I needed to call someone. Someone I trusted. Someone who knew my finances, my life, my family. Frank, my oldest friend. We'd known each other for 30 years. He'd helped me with all the paperwork after Margaret passed away, my will, my accounts, my insurance policies. If anyone could tell me what was real and what wasn't, it was Frank. I scrolled to his number and pressed call. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. "Well, Henry." Frank's voice came through groggy and confused. "It's 7:40 in the morning. What's going on?" "Frank," I said. My voice was shaking. "I need you to do something for me. Right now, please." There was a pause. I heard rustling on the other end, Frank sitting up in bed, suddenly alert. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I don't know," I said. "Frank, I'm at the airport. I was about to get on a plane to Cambodia, but someone just told me." I stopped. My throat closed up. "Frank, someone just told me they heard Derek and his wife talking. They were planning something bad, in Cambodia, and they mentioned life insurance." Silence. "Henry," Frank said carefully. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I need you to go to my house, right now. Use the spare key I gave you. Go through my desk, my filing cabinet, everything. Find out if there's a life insurance policy I don't know about. Find out if Derek is the beneficiary. Find out if there's anything at all that I'm missing. Henry, this is serious. If what you're saying is true, please, Frank." My voice broke. "I'm begging you. I need to know." "Okay," Frank said. "Okay, I'm getting dressed right now. I'll head over. It'll take me about 30 minutes to get there from Boulder." "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you." I hung up. I sat there alone, staring at my phone, watching the minutes tick by. 7:45, 7:50, 8 o'clock. My flight had departed. I watched the departure board update United 1847. Departed. I'd missed it. I got up and bought myself a cup of coffee I didn't want. I sat back down at the table. I couldn't drink it. My stomach was in knots. 8:30, 8:45. I kept checking my phone. No messages, no calls. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Frank. I answered immediately. "Frank." "Henry." His voice was shaking. In 30 years, I'd never heard Frank sound like this. "What did you find?" I asked. Frank took a breath. "Henry, I'm in your house. I went through your desk like you asked. I found a life insurance policy. A new one. I don't remember ever seeing this before. It's dated 3 months ago. January." My heart stopped. "How much?" I whispered. $350,000. The room spun. "Beneficiary Derek Lawson," Frank continued. "Your son." I couldn't speak. "Henry," Frank said carefully. "I've seen your signature 1,000 times. I helped you sign documents after Margaret passed away. This signature on the insurance policy, it looks exactly like yours. But there's something off about it. The loops are too perfect. The pressure is too even. I think someone forged it." "Forged it," I repeated numbly. "Yes," Frank said, "and there's more." I closed my eyes. "I checked your bank statements," Frank continued. "There's a withdrawal from your joint checking account. $12,000 2 weeks ago. April 1st. Do you remember authorizing that?" "No," I said. "I didn't authorize anything." "The withdrawal was made online," Frank said. "From an IP address that traces back to Derek's neighborhood, probably his condo." I felt like I was going to throw up. "Frank," I said slowly, "is there anything else?" There was a long pause. "Henry," Frank said, his voice tight. "There's a laptop here, on the coffee table in your living room. I think Derek left it here the last time he visited. And I opened it. The browser history is still there. Henry, there are search terms from 2 weeks ago. Life insurance payout timeline. Accidental traveler incidents in Southeast Asia. Phnom Penh Central Market crime statistics. How long to process international incident claims?" I couldn't breathe. "There's more," Frank said. "I found emails between Derek and someone with an anonymous email address. The subject line says, 'Arrangement confirmed.' The emails are vague, but they mention Central Market, a time frame, day 3, and a payment. $12,000, half up front, half upon completion." My hands gripped the edge of the table. "And Henry?" Frank's voice cracked. "I found text messages between Derek and his wife from this morning. She texted him at 6:45 a.m. "Is he on the plane yet?" Derek replied. "Almost. I can't do this." She wrote back, "You don't have a choice. It's already in motion. Central Market, day 3. Make sure he boards." I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My son. My only child. The boy I'd raised. The man Margaret had loved more than anything in the world. "Henry, are you there?" Frank asked. "Yeah," I managed. "Henry, I'm calling the police right now. You need to stay at the airport. Don't go anywhere. Do you understand me?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Okay. I'm calling the Denver Police Department. I'm going to tell them everything. They'll send officers to the airport to meet you. Stay where you are. Don't leave." "Okay," I said again. "Henry?" Frank's voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I couldn't respond. I just hung up. I set the phone down on the table. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. I sat there alone in the middle of the busy terminal, surrounded by travelers rushing to their gates, and I felt completely, utterly empty. My son had tried to have me taken from this world, for money, for $350,000. I couldn't breathe. Frank's final words echoed in my mind. Henry, I'm calling the police. Right now, 9:15 a.m. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I just sat there numb, my coffee untouched, watching travelers move past me like I was invisible. At 9:45, two people in plain clothes approached my table. A man and a woman. The man was maybe 50 years old with salt and pepper hair and a weathered, serious face. The woman was younger, maybe 37, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. The man held up a badge. Mr. Lawson, I looked up. Yes. I'm Detective James Bradley. This is Officer Patricia Wells, Denver Police Department. Your friend Frank Coleman called us. Can we sit down? I nodded. They sat across from me. Detective Bradley folded his hands on the table and looked at me carefully. Mr. Lawson, we need to ask you some questions. But first I want you to know that we take this very seriously. Your friend gave us some information that suggests you may be in danger. Is that correct? My throat was dry. Yes. Officer Wells pulled out a small notebook and a pen. Can you tell us what happened this morning? Bradley asked. I took a shaky breath and told them everything. About Derek and his wife giving me the tickets. About the trip to Cambodia. About them leaving me at the gate. About the man who'd stopped me from boarding. The man who warned you, Bradley said. Is he still here? I looked around. I don't know. He left after I made the phone call to Frank. Bradley nodded to Wells. She stood up and scanned the terminal. A moment later, she returned with Raymond Foster walking beside her. Raymond looked at me, then at the detectives. I'm the one who overheard the conversation, he said. Bradley gestured for him to sit. Tell us exactly what you heard. Raymond sat down and repeated everything word for word, the same story he'd told me. Derek's phone call. The woman's voice on the other end. Central Market. Day 3. Make it look like a robbery. The mention of life insurance and money. Officer Wells wrote it all down her pen, moving quickly across the page. When Raymond finished, Bradley turned back to me. Mr. Lawson, we need information about your son and his wife. Full names, addresses, phone numbers, anything you can give us. I gave them everything. Derek Lawson, 34 years old, financial advisor, his wife 31, marketing director at a tech startup. Their condo address in the Highlands neighborhood not far from Washington Park where I lived. Bradley looked at me with something like sympathy in his eyes. Mr. Lawson, we need to act extremely fast. If what Mr. Foster heard is true, there may be someone in Cambodia right now waiting for you to arrive. We need to stop this before it goes any further. I nodded, unable to speak. We're going to need you to come down to the station with us, Bradley said. We have some things we need to show you, and we're going to need a full statement. At 10:15, I found myself sitting in a cold, sterile interrogation room at the Denver Police Department headquarters. The walls were gray. The table was metal. The chairs were hard and uncomfortable. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Detective Bradley and Officer Wells sat across from me. Bradley opened a thick folder and spread several documents across the table. Mr. Lawson? Bradley said, your friend Frank gave us access to your home. We've been conducting an investigation for the past hour. I need to show you what we found. He slid a document across the table. It was a life insurance policy. This policy was taken out 3 months ago, Bradley said. In your name. The beneficiary is your son, Derek Lawson. The payout amount is $350,000. I stared at the number. $350,000. It was the first time I'd seen the actual figure. Frank had mentioned it on the phone, but seeing it written there, cold, black ink on white paper, made it real in a way I hadn't been able to process before. "That's a lot of money," Bradley said quietly. I nodded. "The signature on this document," Bradley continued, "has been examined by our forensics team. It's a forgery. A very good one, but a forgery nonetheless. Someone copied your signature almost perfectly." Officer Wells slid another document across the table. A bank statement. "This shows a withdrawal of $12,000 from your joint checking account," Wells said. "2 weeks ago, April 1st, the withdrawal was made online from an IP address that we've traced to your son's residence." I couldn't look away from the numbers. "Mr. Lawson," Bradley said, "with the evidence we have, and with Mr. Foster's testimony, I was able to get an emergency warrant from a judge. We're treating this as a conspiracy to commit serious harm. That gives us the authority to move quickly." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means we've already begun searching your son's residence," Bradley said. "We've seized his electronic devices, his laptop, his phone, his wife's phone. We're going through their financial records, their emails, their text messages, everything." I felt like I was going to be sick. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Detective Bradley's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood up. "Excuse me for a moment," he said. He stepped out of the room. Officer Wells stayed with me silent. 5 minutes later, Bradley returned. He was carrying a laptop. He set it down on the table and opened it. The screen lit up, showing a desktop with several folders and icons. "Mr. Lawson," Bradley said, his voice careful, "there's more. A lot more. And it involves your daughter-in-law." I looked up at him. Bradley turned the laptop toward me. "We found this on your son's computer. Email correspondence, search history, financial transactions, and text messages between your son and his wife." He clicked on a folder. A series of emails appeared on the screen. "Your daughter-in-law," Bradley said, "appears to be the primary organizer of this plan." My blood ran cold. Bradley opened one of the emails. The subject line read, "Final confirmation." The body of the email was brief, written in careful, vague language. But the meaning was clear. Arrangement confirmed. Central Market, Phnom Penh. Day 3. Target elderly male solo traveler. Payment $12,000 USD, half up front, half upon completion. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. I couldn't breathe. Bradley opened another file. Text messages between Derek and his wife from this morning. 6:45 a.m. Her, is he on the plane? Yet 6:47 a.m. Derek, almost. I can't do this. 6:48 a.m. Her. You don't have a choice. It's already in motion. Central Market. Day 3. Make sure he boards. 6:50 a.m. Derek, I can't. He's my father. 6:51 a.m. Her. He's worth $350,000, and we're out of time. The payment is already made. If he doesn't get on that plane, we lose everything. I stared at the screen. My daughter-in-law. The woman Derek had married. The woman I'd welcomed into my family. She had planned this. "Mr. Lawson," Detective Bradley said quietly, "there's more. A lot more. And it's all connected to her." Detective Bradley turned the laptop screen toward me. "Mr. Lawson," he said carefully, "what I'm about to show you is going to be very difficult, but you need to see it." I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I could handle any more. Bradley opened an email folder. The sender's address was Chelsea's personal email, the one I recognized from family messages and holiday photos. But the recipient was an address I'd never seen before, fixerpp@proton.me. Bradley clicked on one of the emails. The subject line read, "Final details." I leaned forward and read the message. Target male American, 63 years old. Arriving April 15th, Central Market Day 3. Must look natural accident or robbery. Total fee $25,000 US, half up front, half upon completion. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. My daughter-in-law. The woman who'd sat at my kitchen table and smiled at me. The woman who'd told me I deserved this trip. The woman who'd stood beside my son and watched him hug me goodbye. She had negotiated my life like I was a transaction. "Mr. Lawson, are you okay?" Officer Wells asked. I couldn't answer. I felt like Bradley clicked on another email. This one had an attachment, a bank transfer confirmation. "The $12,000 your friend Frank found," Bradley said. "Chelsea transferred it to a phone number in Cambodia. Country code +855. That's the deposit. The other half, $13,000, was supposed to be paid after the plan was carried out." I stared at the screen. The phone number. The amount. The date, April 1st. 2 weeks ago. Bradley opened another folder. We also pulled Chelsea's phone records. Over the past 6 months, she's made 247 calls and text messages to a man named Preston Walsh. "Who's Preston Walsh?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Bradley pulled up a profile. A photograph appeared on the screen. A man in his early 50s, well-dressed, confident smile. Salt and pepper hair. Expensive suit. "Preston Walsh," Bradley said. 52 years old. CEO of a tech company based in Boulder. Divorced. No kids. Owns a house in Cherry Creek worth $2.3 million. I didn't understand. "What does he have to do with this?" Bradley clicked on the text message thread between Chelsea and Preston. The messages went back months. I read them, my stomach twisting with every line. "Chelsea, I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. Preston, soon, babe. Soon we'll have everything. Chelsea, I hate lying to him. But it's the only way. Preston. Once this is over, we'll start fresh. Just you and me. Chelsea. I love you. Preston, I love you too. Just a little longer." The messages were from 3 weeks ago. Then 2 weeks ago. Then last week. Then this week. The most recent one was from this morning, 6:30 a.m., right before Derek and Chelsea picked me up. "Chelsea, it's happening today. He's on his way to the airport. Preston. Are you sure Derek can handle it? Chelsea, he doesn't have a choice. The money's already sent. Preston, and after Chelsea, we leave tomorrow. Bahamas, just like we planned." I couldn't breathe. Detective Bradley looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Mr. Lawson, did you know your daughter-in-law was having an affair?" I shook my head. Tears were running down my face, and I didn't even try to stop them. Officer Wells slid another document across the table. "We found this in Chelsea's email. Flight reservations. 2 tickets. Denver to Nassau, Bahamas. Departing tomorrow, April 16th. Passengers Chelsea Lawson and Preston Walsh." I stared at the flight confirmation. Tomorrow. They were going to leave tomorrow. "She was planning to take the money and run," Bradley said quietly. "I'm with her lover. And leave your son behind to deal with the consequences." "Does Derek know?" I asked. My voice sounded hollow, distant. "Does he know about Preston?" Bradley hesitated. "We don't know yet, but based on the evidence we've seen, we believe Chelsea has been manipulating your son for months. We found records showing that Derek owes a significant amount of money, gambling debts, bad investments. Close to $425,000. Chico, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Chelsea knew about the debts, Bradley continued, and we believe she used them to pressure him into this plan. She convinced him that the life insurance payout was the only way out. But the evidence suggests she was planning to take the money and disappear with Preston Walsh. Your son may have been a tool, but he's still complicit. I couldn't process it. My son, my daughter-in-law, a stranger named Preston Walsh, $425,000 in debt, an affair, a plan to have me taken from this world, a flight to the Bahamas. It was too much. It was all too much. Mr. Lawson, Bradley said, his voice firm, we need to move quickly. Based on what we've found, we have enough evidence to arrest both your son and your daughter-in-law. We also need to bring in Preston Walsh for questioning. I looked up at him. What happens now? We're going to send units to apprehend them, Bradley said. Your son is most likely at his condo. Chelsea may be there as well, or she may be with Preston Walsh. We'll find them. Officer Wells leaned forward. We're also going to alert the authorities in Cambodia. If there's someone waiting for you at Central Market in Phnom Penh, we need to make sure they're stopped before they can harm anyone else. I nodded numbly. Bradley closed the laptop and stood up. He looked at me carefully, his expression serious. We're going to arrest them, right now, he said. Mr. Lawson, I need to ask you something. When we bring your son in for interrogation, would you want to be present in the observation room? You wouldn't be in the same room as him, but you'd be able to see and hear everything. He paused. Some people find it helps them understand, Bradley continued. Others find it too painful. The choice is entirely yours. I stared at him, my mind racing. Did I want to see my son? Did I want to hear him explain why he'd tried to have me taken away? Did I want to watch him sit across from a detective and answer questions about the plan to end my life? Detective Bradley's eyes didn't leave mine. So I'm asking you, Mr. Lawson, he said quietly. Do you want to be there when we interrogate your son? I didn't answer Detective Bradley's question right away. I just sat there staring at the table, my mind spinning. Did I want to see my son? Did I want to hear what he had to say? Before I could respond, Bradley's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood up. Excuse me, Mr. Lawson. I need to coordinate the arrest. Officer Wells will stay with you. He left the room. Wells sat down across from me, her expression calm and professional. Can I get you anything? She asked. Water, coffee. I shook my head. I couldn't imagine eating or drinking anything. So I just sat there, waiting. 2 hours later, Detective Bradley returned. His face was tight, serious, but there was something in his eyes, relief maybe, or satisfaction. We got him, Bradley said. I looked up. Derek. Yes, he wasn't at his condo. But we found him at a friend's house. Stephen Parker, 32 years old, lives about 15 minutes from your son's place. Bradley sat down across from me and folded his hands on the table. Let me tell you what happened, he said. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when 4 police vehicles surrounded Stephen Parker's house. It was a modest place in a quiet neighborhood, a small 2-story home with a neatly trimmed lawn and a wooden fence around the backyard. Detective Bradley led the team. Officer Wells was with him, along with 2 other officers. Bradley knocked on the front door. Hard. 3 times. A moment later, the door opened. A young man stood there, tall, lean, with messy brown hair and a confused expression. Stephen Parker. The moment Stephen saw the badges, the uniforms, the cars parked on the street, His face went pale. "What's going on?" Stephen asked. His voice was shaking. "We're looking for Derek Lawson," Bradley said. "Is he here?" Stephen hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. "I need you to step aside, Mr. Parker," Bradley said. Stephen didn't move. "I don't—" "Step aside. Now." Stephen stepped back, his hands raised. Bradley walked into the house. Wells followed. The other officers moved around the side, covering the back exit. "Derek Lawson," Bradley called out. "This is the Denver police. We have a warrant for your arrest. Come out now." Silence, and then movement. Fast. From the back of the house. Wells reacted immediately. She ran through the kitchen, out the back door, into the yard. Derek was halfway across the lawn, heading for the back fence. "Stop, police!" Wells shouted. Derek didn't stop. He kept running. Wells was faster. She caught up to him in 3 strides, grabbed his shoulder and pulled him down. Derek hit the grass hard, face first. Wells didn't hesitate. She was on him in a second, pulling his arms behind his back, locking the handcuffs around his wrists. Derek didn't fight. He didn't struggle. He just lay there on the grass, his face pressed into the dirt, and he started to cry. "Oh, God," Derek sobbed. "Oh, God, I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want this. I didn't want this." Wells pulled him to his feet. Derek's legs buckled. He could barely stand. "Derek Lawson," Wells said, her voice flat and official. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit serious harm. You have the right to remain silent." Derek wasn't listening. He was crying too hard. 2 officers led him back through the house, out the front door, toward one of the waiting police cars. Stephen Parker stood in the doorway, his face white, his eyes wide. "What did he do?" Stephen asked. His voice was barely a whisper. One of the officers looked at him. "Conspiracy. The victim was his own father." Stephen's knees gave out. He grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. They put Derek in the back of the police car. He didn't look up. He just sat there, slumped over, sobbing, and they drove him away. Detective Bradley finished the story and looked at me. "That's what happened," he said. "Your son is here now, downstairs, in an interrogation room." I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. Bradley leaned forward. "Mr. Lawson, we've charged him with conspiracy to commit serious harm. Based on the evidence we have, the forged life insurance policy, the bank transfers, the emails, the text messages, we have more than enough to hold him. He's not going anywhere." I nodded slowly. "We brought him in about 20 minutes ago," Bradley continued. "We read him his rights. We told him what he's been charged with. And then we left him alone in the room to think." "What did he say?" I asked. "Not much," Bradley said. "He was crying. He kept saying, 'I didn't want this. I didn't want this.' Over and over." I closed my eyes. Bradley's voice softened. "Mr. Lawson, your son is asking to see you." I opened my eyes. "What? He's asking for you," Bradley said. "He says he wants to explain. He says he needs to talk to you." I stared at him. "You want me to go in there to talk to him?" "No," Bradley said. "Not directly. We can't allow that, not yet. But you can watch. From the observation room, there's a one-way mirror. You'll be able to see him and hear him. He won't know you're there. And when we interrogate him, you'll hear everything he says." I felt sick. "You don't have to do this," Bradley said gently. "If it's too much, we understand. But if you want to know the truth, if you want to hear it from him, this is your chance." I looked down at my hands. They were still shaking. My son. My only child. The boy I'd raised. The man I'd loved more than anything in the world. He was sitting in a room downstairs, handcuffed to a table waiting to be interrogated for trying to have me taken from this world. And he wanted to explain. Detective Bradley stood up. He looked at me carefully. "So I'll ask you again, Mr. Lawson," he said quietly. "He's asking for you. He wants to explain." I stared at Detective Bradley, unable to speak. My son wanted to explain. My son, who'd tried to have me taken from this world, wanted to tell me why. Bradley's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked back at me. "There's something else you need to know," he said. "While we were arresting Derek, another team was at his house, going after Chelsea." He stood up and gestured for me to follow him. "Come with me. I'll tell you what happened." We walked down a hallway to another small room, a briefing room with a table, a whiteboard, and a few chairs. Bradley motioned for me to sit. At the same time, we were surrounding Stephen Parker's house. Bradley began. "A second unit was executing a warrant at your son's condo in the Highlands. 4 officers, led by Sergeant Martinez." Bradley opened a folder and pulled out several photographs, crime scene photos, evidence logs. When they arrived at 2 o'clock, Bradley continued, "Chelsea was home, alone, and she was packing." He slid one of the photos across the table. It showed a bedroom with 2 large suitcases open on the bed. Clothes folded neatly inside. Shoes. Toiletries. "The officers knocked," Bradley said. "You announced themselves." Chelsea opened the door. She looked surprised, but not panicked. Not at first. Bradley paused, as if remembering the report he'd read. Sergeant Martinez said, "Chelsea Lawson, we have a warrant for your arrest. Put your hands on your head." "And what did she do?" I asked. "She blinked," Bradley said, like she didn't understand. Then she said, "I'm sorry, what's going on? Where's Derek?" Bradley shook his head. She tried to play innocent, but Martinez wasn't buying it. He told her again, "Hands on your head. You're under arrest." She complied. I asked. "Eventually," Bradley said. "But not before she tried to talk her way out of it. She kept asking what the charges were. She kept saying there must be some mistake. She even tried to cry." I felt sick. Bradley slid another photo across the table. This one showed the interior of the condo, a sleek modern space with hardwood floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. While Martinez was cuffing her, Bradley said the other officers searched the house, and they found a lot. He pulled out an evidence list and read from it. 2 plane tickets to Nassau, Bahamas. Departing tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Passengers Chelsea Lawson and Preston Walsh. First class. One-way tickets. My hands clenched into fists. $18,000 in cash, Bradley continued, hidden in one of the suitcases, wrapped in a sweater, small bills, 50s and 100s. He looked up at me. "No, that's the other half of the payment to the fixer in Cambodia. The first $12,000 was already sent. This $18,000 was supposed to be sent once the job was done." I couldn't breathe. "They also found her laptop," Bradley said. "Open on the kitchen counter, still logged in. Email correspondence with Fixer PP at proton.me. Text messages with Preston Walsh. All of it right there." He slid another photo across. A screenshot of an email. "Everything is set. He boards tomorrow. Day 3 Central Market. Make it look natural. Final payment upon confirmation." The email was sent from Chelsea's personal account. 3 days ago. When confronted with the evidence, Bradley said Chelsea changed her strategy. She stopped playing innocent. She started blaming your son. "What did she say?" I asked. Bradley leaned back in his chair. She said, "Derek must have used my account. He made me do this. He threatened me. I had no choice." I closed my eyes. "But we have proof," Bradley said. Voice recordings from her phone calls with the fixer. Email metadata showing the messages were sent from her devices, not Derek's. Text messages with Preston Walsh that make it very clear she was the one orchestrating this. He tapped the folder. "Your daughter-in-law, Mr. Lawson, is the architect of this entire plan. She researched the fixer. She made the arrangements. She transferred the money. She manipulated your son into going along with it by exploiting his debts. And she was planning to take the insurance payout, leave your son to deal with the fallout, and run off to the Bahamas with her lover." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "Where is she now?" I asked. "Downstairs," Bradley said. "In a separate interrogation room, about 50 feet away from your son. They're in different wings. They can't see each other. They can't communicate." He closed the folder and looked at me carefully. "Mr. Lawson, we're going to interrogate both of them, separately. We'll start with your son because he's asking for you. He wants to explain. He wants to tell you his side of the story." I didn't know what to say. Bradley stood up. "You don't have to be there. You can stay here or you can go home and we'll update you later. But if you want to hear the truth, if you want to hear it directly from him, now is the time." I looked down at my hands. They were still shaking. My son, my daughter-in-law. Both of them sitting in separate rooms waiting to be interrogated for trying to have me taken from this world. And I was supposed to listen. Detective Bradley walked to the door, then turned back to me. "Mr. Lawson," he said quietly, "are you ready to face your son? Made it this far? Drop justice in the comments to show you're still here." A gentle reminder, this story uses fictional elements to enhance the narrative. Not all details represent literal events. You're welcome to close the video if you prefer. But if you want to witness the moment I had to look my son in the eyes and hear his confession, keep watching. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Detective Bradley led me down a narrow hallway to a heavy metal door. A small window was set into the wall, beside it one-way glass. Through it, I could see a small, cold room with a metal table and 2 chairs. Derek sat in one of the chairs. His hands were cuffed to a metal ring bolted to the table. His face was pale, his eyes red and swollen. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Bradley looked at me. "You don't have to go in there, Mr. Lawson. You can watch from here. He won't know you're watching." I shook my head. "I need to talk to him." Bradley hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Bradley nodded slowly. "All right. I'll be right outside if you need me." He opened the door. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me with a heavy final sound. Derek looked up. The moment he saw me, his face crumpled. He collapsed forward onto the table, his shoulders shaking, and he started to sob. "Dad!" he choked out. "Dad, please, please forgive me, please!" I stood there for a moment, frozen. Then I walked slowly to the table and sat down in the chair across from him. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could feel my heart breaking with every word. "Why, Derek?" I said. "Why did you do this to me?" Derek couldn't look at me. He kept his face pressed against the table, his body heaving with sobs. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "I'm so sorry. I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this." "Then why?" I asked again. My voice cracked. "Why did you try to have me taken away?" Derek finally looked up. His face was a mess, tears streaming down his cheeks, his nose running, his eyes red and raw. "I was desperate," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. Dad, I was so desperate. I didn't know what else to do. Tell me, I said. Tell me everything. Derek took a shaky breath, and then he started talking. It started in January of last year, he said. 2022. I got invited to a poker game. Just a friendly game with some guys from work. I thought it would be fun. I thought I could handle it. He wiped his face with the back of his cuffed hand. But I lost, he continued. I lost a lot. And I kept going back, trying to win it back. And I kept losing. By the end of the year, I was down $150,000. I stared at him. $150,000. Derek nodded miserably. I took out loans, credit cards, personal loans. I maxed everything out. And when the banks wouldn't lend me any more, I went to people who would. Loan sharks, I said. Yes. Derek's voice broke. They charged me insane interest. 20%, 30%. The debt just kept growing. And a week ago, it was up to $425,000. My stomach turned. They came to my condo, Derek said. 2 men. They beat me up. They told me I had 10 days to pay them back, or they'd come after Chelsea. They said they'd hurt her. They said they'd hurt the baby. The baby, I said. Derek looked down. Chelsea told me she was pregnant. 4 months. She said if I didn't find a way to get the money, they'd hurt her and the baby both. I closed my eyes. Later, I would find out that there was no baby. Chelsea had lied about that too. But in that moment, Derek believed it. Why didn't you come to me? I asked. My voice was shaking. Derek, why didn't you tell me? I would have helped you. I would have done anything. I was ashamed, Derek said. He was crying again. I was so ashamed, Dad. I didn't want you to know what I'd done. And Chelsea said, she said you wouldn't have enough money to pay off the debt anyway. She said the house and your savings wouldn't be enough. She said there was only one way. I looked at him. So you decided to have me taken from this world. Derek's face twisted in agony. No, it wasn't my idea, it was Chelsea's, she kept saying. She kept saying you'd already lived a full life, that you were 63 years old, that Mom was gone and you were lonely and maybe it would be better if you didn't have to suffer anymore. I felt like I'd been stabbed. She said Mom would want us to be happy. Derek continued, his voice breaking. She said Mom would understand. She said this was the only way to save our family. Your mother, I said, my voice shaking with anger, told you to take care of me. On her deathbed, she made you promise. Derek collapsed forward, sobbing. I know, Dad. I broke my promise. I broke everything. Tell me the rest, I said. Tell me about Cambodia. Derek wiped his face again. Chelsea found the person, the fixer. She found him online somehow. She made all the arrangements. She set up the email account. She transferred the money. She planned everything. All I had to do was make sure you got on the plane. And you did, I said. I tried, Derek whispered. But at the airport, Dad, at the airport, I couldn't do it. I couldn't watch you get on that plane. I tried to tell Chelsea we had to stop. I told her I couldn't go through with it. But she texted me. She said it was too late. She said the money was already paid. She said if we didn't go through with it, the fixer would come after us. She said we couldn't turn back. I stood up slowly. Tears were streaming down my face. You destroyed everything, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a knife. You destroyed our family. You destroyed your mother's memory. You broke the promise you made to her. Derek slid out of his chair and collapsed onto the floor, still cuffed to the table, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, Dad," he gasped. "Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked down at him, my son, my only child, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the boy I'd watched grow into a man, the boy Margaret had loved more than anything in the world. And now he was on his knees, crying, begging for forgiveness, for trying to have me taken from this world. I turned and walked to the door. "Dad!" Derek screamed. "Dad, please don't leave me, please." I opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. Detective Bradley was standing there waiting. I looked at him. "I can't," I said. My voice was hollow. "I can't look at him anymore." I walked away. Behind me, I could still hear Derek's sobs echoing through the metal door. I didn't go into the room when they interrogated Chelsea. I couldn't. I'd barely made it through the conversation with Derek. I didn't have the strength to face her. Instead, I sat in the observation room with Officer Wells. She brought me water. She didn't say anything. She just sat with me while I stared at the one-way glass, watching the empty interrogation room on the other side. At 5:30 in the evening, 2 officers brought Chelsea in. She looked calm, composed. Her hair was still pulled back neatly. Her clothes were clean. She walked into the room like she was walking into a business meeting. They sat her down, cuffed her hands to the table. And then Detective Bradley walked in. "Mrs. Lawson," Bradley said, sitting down across from her. "Do you know why you're here?" Chelsea looked at him with cold, steady eyes. "I want a lawyer." Bradley nodded. "That's your right. But before we call one, I think you should know what evidence we have." He opened a folder and slid several documents across the table. Photographs, bank statements, email printouts, text messages. Chelsea glanced at them. Her face didn't change. "We found the tickets to the Bahamas," Bradley said. "You and Preston Walsh, departing tomorrow morning. First class, one way." Chelsea said nothing. "We found $18,000 in cash in your suitcase," Bradley continued. "Hidden under a sweater. Small bills. That's the second half of the payment to the fixer in Cambodia, isn't it?" Still nothing. Bradley leaned forward. "We also found your laptop. Open, logged in. Emails to fixer pp@proton.me. Text messages with Preston Walsh. All of it." Chelsea's jaw tightened. Just slightly. But I saw it. Bradley sat back. "Mrs. Lawson, we have everything. The emails, the bank transfers, the flight reservations, the voice recordings. You're not getting out of this. So you can either sit here and say nothing while we build the case against you, or you can talk to me. Your choice." There was a long silence, and then Chelsea spoke. Her voice was flat, cold. "Derek is weak," she said. "He gambled away everything we had. He buried us in debt. I needed a way out." Bradley didn't react. He just watched her. "I met Preston 8 months ago," Chelsea continued. "At a business conference in Boulder. He's successful, wealthy, CEO of a tech company. Everything Derek isn't." "And you started an affair," Bradley said. "Yes." Chelsea didn't look ashamed. She looked bored. "Preston didn't know I was married. I told him I was separated, that I was in the process of getting a divorce. He believed me." "Did he know about the plan?" Bradley asked. Chelsea laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. Of course not. Preston's not a criminal. He's just useful. He has money. He has connections. And he was willing to take me away from all of this. Bradley tapped the folder. Tell me about Henry Lawson. Chelsea's expression didn't change. He's 63 years old. He's lived a full life. His wife is gone. He's alone. He has hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in the bank doing nothing. It made sense. I felt like I'd been slapped. It made sense to have him taken away, Bradley said. Chelsea shrugged. Derek owed $425,000. The life insurance policy was worth $350,000. Add in Henry's savings and the house, and we'd have more than enough to pay off the debt and start over. Bradley's voice was hard. And Derek, your husband, what about him? Chelsea smiled. It was a cold, cruel smile. Derek is easy to manipulate. He's terrified of the loan sharks. He's desperate. All I had to do was convince him there was no other way. And after, Bradley asked. After the plan was carried out, what were you going to do with Derek? Chelsea leaned back in her chair as much as the cuffs would allow. Leave him, obviously. I'd already booked the tickets. Preston and I were supposed to fly out tomorrow morning. By the time Derek figured it out, I'd be gone. And Preston, Bradley said, he didn't know any of this. No, Chelsea said. Preston thought I was leaving Derek to be with him. He thought we were starting a new life together. He had no idea about the rest of it. Bradley closed the folder. Mrs. Lawson, you're being charged with conspiracy to commit serious harm, fraud, forgery, and wire transfer violations. You're looking at 15 to 20 years in prison. Chelsea's face finally flickered, just for a second. Fear, or maybe anger. I want my lawyer now, she said. Bradley stood up. We'll arrange that. He walked out of the room. Chelsea sat there alone, staring at the table. I turned away from the glass. I couldn't look at her anymore. At 7 o'clock that evening, Preston Walsh arrived at the police station. Detective Bradley had asked him to come in for questioning. Preston had agreed immediately. I watched through the glass as they brought him into another interrogation room. He looked confused, worried, but not guilty. Preston Walsh was 51 years old, tall, well-dressed with salt and pepper hair and an expensive watch. He looked exactly like what he was, a successful businessman who had no idea he'd been manipulated. Mr. Walsh, Bradley said, sitting down across from him, thank you for coming in. I need to ask you some questions about Chelsea Lawson. Preston's face went pale. Is she okay? What's going on? Bradley explained everything. The plan. The fixer in Cambodia. The life insurance fraud. The emails. The money transfers. Preston's face went from pale to white. He looked like he was going to be sick. I didn't know, Preston said. His voice was shaking. I swear to God I didn't know any of this. She told me she was getting a divorce. She said her husband was abusive. She said she needed to get away from him. I believed her. Bradley nodded. We know Mr. Walsh. We've checked your phone records, your emails, your bank accounts. There's no evidence you were involved in any of this. You were a victim too. She lied to you. Preston put his head in his hands. Oh God. Oh God. After an hour of questioning, the police cleared Preston Walsh. He wasn't charged with anything. He left the station looking like a broken man. Later that night, Detective Bradley sat down with me in the waiting room. He looked tired. Mr. Lawson, he said, I wanted to give you an update. We've finished the initial interrogations. Your son and your daughter-in-law have both been charged. They'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. I nodded numbly. Bradley hesitated. For what it's worth, they're very different. Your son is guilty, yes, but he was manipulated. He's weak and he made terrible choices, but there's remorse there. Your daughter-in-law, on the other hand, he shook his head. She's cold, calculating. She has no remorse. She planned this from the beginning. I looked down at my hands. Two people, two different levels of guilt. But both of them had destroyed my world. That evening, April 15th, 2023, Frank drove me home. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, watching Denver blur past. I didn't say anything. There were no words left. When we pulled up in front of my house in Washington Park, Frank turned off the engine and looked at me. "Do you want me to come in?" he asked. I nodded. We walked up the steps together. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was cold, silent, empty. I walked into the living room. My eyes went to the mantel above the fireplace. Photographs, framed memories. Margaret and me on our wedding day in 1987. She was wearing a white dress with lace sleeves. I was wearing a suit that was too big. We were smiling like we had the whole world ahead of us. Derek, at 8 years old, standing next to a blue bicycle. I'd spent all afternoon teaching him how to ride it. In the photo, he was grinning, one hand on the handlebars, the other giving a thumbs up. Derek in a cap and gown at MIT in 2011. Finance degree. Margaret and I had driven to Boston for his graduation. I remembered how proud I'd felt. Derek and his wife on their wedding day in 2018. Standing under an arch of white flowers. I'd given a speech that night. I'd welcomed her into our family. I stared at the photographs. They looked like lies now. Cruel, beautiful lies. Frank stood beside me. "Henry, I can't stay here tonight," I said. "Then don't. Come to my place." I shook my head. "No, I need to be here." Frank nodded slowly. "Then I'm staying with you. I'm not leaving you alone tonight." I didn't argue. Frank made coffee. I sat on the couch in the dark. I couldn't turn on the lights. I just sat there staring at nothing. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek's face. I heard his voice. "I'm sorry, Dad. Please forgive me." At 3 in the morning, I got up and pulled out the old family photo album. I sat at the kitchen table and turned the pages slowly. Derek as a baby. First day of school. Little League baseball. High school graduation. I stopped on a photograph from 2005. Derek was 16. We were standing in the driveway next to the old Honda Civic I'd bought him. My arm was around his shoulders. He was smiling up at me. I remembered that day. I'd spent weeks teaching him to drive. When he finally got his license, I'd told him, "I'm proud of you, son. Your mom and I are so proud." I turned the page. MIT graduation. Derek between Margaret and me holding his diploma. I told him, "Your mother would be so proud of you." I turned the page again. His wedding, 2018. Derek at the altar holding his wife's hands. I'd given a speech at the reception. "Welcome to the family. You're not just my son's wife. You're my daughter." I closed the album. I couldn't look anymore. I thought about the last 18 months. The months I'd spent alone after Margaret passed away. The grief, the loneliness, the nights I'd sat in this house wishing she were still here. I thought about the hospital bills, the treatments that hadn't worked, the $80,000 we'd spent trying to keep her alive. It had drained most of our savings. That's why I only had $100,000 left. And my son had known that. He'd known how much I'd struggled. And he'd still tried to have me taken away. The next morning, a lawyer called. Robert Smith, assigned by the district attorney's office. Mr. Lawson, he said, I know this is difficult, but we need your testimony. You're the victim. Your testimony is crucial. I sat at the kitchen table, phone pressed to my ear. Frank was nearby watching. What do you need? I asked. You'll need to testify in court, Robert said. Tell the jury what happened, what they planned, how it affected you. You'll be in the same room as them. You'll have to face them. I closed my eyes. I understand. There's something else, Robert said. Your son's lawyer will argue he was manipulated, coerced by his wife. They'll try to get him a lighter sentence. They might try to argue you were distant and that you didn't help him. I felt anger surge. That's not true. I know. That's why we need you to testify, to tell the truth. I took a breath. I'll do it. I'll testify. They need to face justice. Robert was quiet. I'm sorry, Mr. Lawson. No father should have to do this. No, I said. They shouldn't. I hung up. Frank looked at me. You okay? I shook my head. No, but I made my decision. I'm going to testify. Frank nodded. That takes courage. I didn't feel courageous. I felt broken. But justice had to be served, even if it tore apart what was left of my heart. The hardest part was still ahead. 2 weeks later, late April 2023, Detective Bradley came to my house with an update. Frank was there with me. He'd been staying at my place on and off since that first night, making sure I wasn't alone. I was grateful for it. I didn't trust myself to be alone. Bradley sat down at my kitchen table and opened a thick folder. Mr. Lawson, he said, the investigation is complete. I wanted to update you on what we've found. I nodded, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I hadn't touched. First, Bradley said, we coordinated with Interpol. The person your daughter-in-law hired in Phnom Penh, the fixer, has been arrested by Cambodian authorities. He's confessed. He admitted to receiving $12,000 from an American woman. He was waiting at Central Market on the date your son and daughter-in-law had specified. If you'd gotten on that plane... Bradley paused. Well, you wouldn't have come home. I felt sick. Second, Bradley continued. We've gone through all the phone records. Between your son and daughter-in-law, we found 47 phone calls and text messages specifically discussing the plan. They used coded language in some of them, but the context is clear. They were coordinating every detail. He slid a printout across the table. I looked at it. Dates, times, call durations. We also found search history on your daughter-in-law's laptop, Bradley said. She was researching non-extradition countries, how to disappear without a trace, how to set up offshore bank accounts. She was planning to take the money and vanish. I closed my eyes. The district attorney's office has reviewed all the evidence, Bradley said. They're confident we have an extremely strong case. Your daughter-in-law is being charged with conspiracy to commit serious harm, wire fraud, forgery, and several other counts. Your son is being charged with conspiracy and complicity. What does that mean? I asked. In terms of how long they'll be in prison. Bradley looked at me carefully. Based on the charges and the evidence, your daughter-in-law is looking at 15 to 20 years. Your son, because he's cooperating and showing remorse, is looking at 10 to 15 years. But nothing is guaranteed. It'll depend on the trial, on the jury, on a lot of factors. I nodded slowly. The trial is scheduled for July, Bradley said. 3 months from now, you'll be called to testify. So will your friend Frank. So will Raymond Foster, the man who warned you at the airport. The prosecution is going to build their case around your testimony. I'll be ready, I said. Bradley stood up. I know this is hard, Mr. Lawson, but you're doing the right thing. After he left, I sat at the table for a long time, staring at the folder he'd left behind. Frank sat down across from me. You okay? No, I said. But I will be, eventually. A few days later, I called Raymond Foster. We'd exchanged phone numbers at the police station, but I hadn't reached out to him since. I didn't know what to say. How do you thank someone for saving your life? But I needed to see him. I needed to understand. We met at a small coffee shop in downtown Denver. Raymond was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table by the window with a cup of black coffee. Mr. Lawson, he said, standing up to shake my hand. Henry, I said. Please call me Henry. We sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I wanted to thank you, I said finally, for what you did. If you hadn't stopped me, I wouldn't be here right now. Raymond nodded. I'm glad I was there. Why did you do it? I asked. You didn't know me. You had no reason to get involved. You could have just walked away. Raymond looked down at his coffee. I couldn't, he said quietly. I couldn't just walk away. Why not? Raymond was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. I lost my son, he said. 10 years ago, 2013. He was 23 years old. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light and hit him head on. He was gone instantly. I felt my chest tighten. I was divorced by then. Raymond continued. My ex-wife and I, we didn't handle it well. The grief tore us apart. I haven't seen her in years. My son was the only family I had left. And when he was gone, he shook his head. I didn't know how to keep going. I'm so sorry, I said. Raymond looked up at me. When I heard your son on the phone that morning, when I realized what he was planning, I thought about my own son. I thought about what it would have been like if he'd been the one trying to have me taken away. And I thought about you. A father. Alone. About to get on a plane, not knowing what was waiting for you. His voice cracked. I couldn't let it happen. I couldn't stand by and watch another father lose his life like that. Not when I could do something to stop it. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there staring at this man who had saved my life because he understood loss in a way most people never would. Thank you, I said finally. Thank you, Raymond. He nodded. You're welcome. Over the next few weeks, Raymond and I met several more times. We'd get coffee or lunch or just walk through the park. We didn't always talk about what had happened. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence. He became a friend. A real friend. Someone who understood pain and loss and grief in a way that most people didn't. Frank was there too, of course. Frank had been my rock through all of this. But Raymond was different. Raymond had saved my life. And in doing so, he'd given me a reason to keep going. For the first time since Margaret had passed away, I felt like the world still had good people in it. People like Raymond. People like Frank. People who showed up when it mattered. In early July, I received a letter from the court. The trial was scheduled to begin on July 10th, 2023. I was listed as the primary witness for the prosecution. I would have to sit in that courtroom. I would have to look at Derek. I would have to look at his wife. And I would have to tell the jury what they had done to me. Frank offered to come with me. Raymond offered too. I told them both yes. I needed them there. 3 months after that terrible day at the airport, the trial began. I would have to face my son in front of a judge and jury, and tell the world what he had tried to do. The courtroom was packed. It was the first week of July 2023, and the Denver County Courthouse had drawn reporters from across Colorado and beyond. Camera flashes lit up the hallway outside courtroom 4A every time someone pushed through the heavy wooden doors. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Rows of wooden benches were filled with spectators, journalists with notebooks, and sketch artists, because cameras were not allowed during proceedings. I sat in the front row of the witness gallery, my hands folded on my lap, trying to steady my breathing. Behind me, Raymond Foster and Frank Coleman sat shoulder to shoulder, their presence the only thread keeping me anchored. At the defense tables sat my son Derek and his wife Chelsea, separated by 10 feet of polished oak and an ocean of betrayal. Derek wore a gray suit that hung loose on his frame. His face was pale, his eyes red and hollow. He glanced at me once, then looked away, as if the sight of me burned him. Chelsea, on the other hand, sat upright in a navy blazer, her expression cold and composed. She stared straight ahead, her lawyer, a sharp woman in her 40s, whispering instructions into her ear. Derek's lawyer, a balding man with thick glasses, shuffled papers nervously. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Maria Gonzalez, stood at the podium. She was in her mid-50s. Her dark hair pulled back into a tight bun, her voice steady and clear. She addressed the jury, 12 ordinary citizens from Denver and the surrounding suburbs, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about greed, manipulation, and ultimate betrayal. It is about a son and a daughter-in-law who conspired to have an innocent man taken from this world so they could collect a life insurance payout worth $350,000. The first week of testimony was brutal. The prosecution presented forensic evidence, enlarged photographs of the life insurance policy application. The forged signature analyzed by a handwriting expert who pointed out the unnaturally even pressure and perfect loops that did not match samples of my authentic signature. Bank records were displayed on a screen showing the $12,000 wire transfer from my joint checking account to a phone number registered in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. An Interpol liaison officer testified via video link from Bangkok. He confirmed that Cambodian authorities had arrested a man known only as Mr. Sofiek Jambo, who admitted to receiving $12,000 as a down payment for what he described as an arrangement, targeting an elderly American tourist at the Central Market on the third day of his visit. In the second week, Raymond took the stand. He wore the same blue flannel shirt he had worn that morning at the airport, though it was freshly pressed. He recounted how he had been cleaning tables near gate A-17 when he overheard a man, Derek, speaking urgently into his phone. He said, "He's about to board the plane. I don't know if I can do this," Raymond testified. Then a woman's voice on the other end said, "It's already done. We can't stop it now. Central Market. Day 3. Make it look like a robbery." The courtroom was silent. Raymond's voice cracked as he explained why he had followed Derek to gate B23 and stopped me from boarding. "I lost my son in a car accident 10 years ago," he said quietly. "I couldn't let another father lose his life if I had the power to stop it." Frank followed Raymond. He described the frantic phone call I had made to him from the airport, how he had driven to my house in Boulder, and what he had found: the life insurance documents, the bank statements, and Derek's laptop left carelessly on the kitchen table. The laptop's search history was entered into evidence, screenshot after screenshot, showing phrases like life insurance claim processing time, accidental death Cambodia, and Central Market Phnom Penh crime statistics. A third witness that week was Stephen Parker, Derek's friend. Stephen, 32 years old and visibly uncomfortable, testified that Derek had arrived at his house on the morning of April 15th in a state of panic. "He was shaking," Stephen said. "He kept saying, 'I can't go through with it. I can't do this to him.' I didn't know what he meant until the police showed up." The third week brought the defendants themselves to the stand. Derek went first. He broke down almost immediately. His lawyer had to ask the judge for a recess after Derek sobbed so hard he could not speak. When he returned, his voice was hoarse. He admitted everything: the gambling debts, the loan sharks, the threats against Chelsea and their unborn child, a lie Chelsea had invented to manipulate him. He described how Chelsea had found the contact in Cambodia, how she had used his desperation and his shame to push him into the plan. "I never wanted this," he whispered, his eyes fixed on the floor. "I loved my father. I didn't know how to stop it once it started." Chelsea's testimony was colder. She did not cry. She admitted to finding the fixer online, to transferring the money, and to booking the tickets to the Bahamas with Preston Walsh. But she insisted Derek was not innocent. "He knew what was happening," she said flatly. "He signed the insurance forms. He made the withdrawals. We were both in it." The fourth week was the hardest. I took the stand on a Tuesday afternoon. Maria Gonzalez asked me to recount the morning at the airport, the gifts, the hope I had felt when Derek and Chelsea gave me the tickets, and the moment Raymond stopped me at the gate. Then she asked me to look at Derek. I turned my head slowly. My son sat slumped in his chair, tears streaming down his face. "Mr. Lawson," she said gently, "if you had boarded that plane, do you believe you would be alive today?" I took a long breath. "No," I said. "I believe they planned to have me taken away on the third day in Phnom Penh at the Central Market, and to make it look like a robbery so they could collect the insurance money." The courtroom was silent. Closing arguments came on Friday. The jury retired to deliberate at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They deliberated for 8 hours through dinner past midnight and into the early morning. At 10:30 on Saturday, they sent a note saying they had reached a verdict, but asked to present it on the following Tuesday to allow time for proper court scheduling. On Tuesday morning, the first week of August 2023, we returned to courtroom 4A. The clerk read the verdict aloud. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Harold Brennan, a stern man in his late 60s, adjusted his glasses and looked down at the papers before him. I sat in the front row, my hands gripping the wooden bench. Behind me, Raymond and Frank waited their presence, the only comfort I had left. "Chelsea Marie Lawson, please rise." Chelsea stood, her navy blazer crisp, her face emotionless. Her lawyer stood beside her, but Chelsea showed no fear, no remorse, nothing. "Mrs. Lawson." Judge Brennan said, "You have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit serious harm, wire fraud, forgery, and solicitation of criminal activity. For conspiracy, you are sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. For wire fraud, 3 additional years. These sentences will run concurrently. You will serve 15 years without parole." Chelsea did not flinch. She stared straight ahead as if the words meant nothing. "Derek Michael Lawson, please rise." My son stood. He looked hollow, gray suit, hanging loose face, gaunt eyes swollen. He trembled, gripping the table for support. "Mr. Lawson," the judge continued, his tone slightly softer. "You have been found guilty of conspiracy and wire fraud. The court acknowledges your cooperation and remorse, but your actions remain inexcusable. For conspiracy, you are sentenced to 10 years. For fraud, 2 additional years, running concurrently. Total 12 years. You may be eligible for parole after 8 years with good behavior." Derek's knees buckled. His lawyer caught him, but his sobs echoed through the room. He turned toward me, tears streaming. "Dad," he whispered, "I know you can't forgive me, but I need you to know I'm truly sorry for what I did." I could not respond. My throat was tight, my chest aching. I stood slowly and walked out without looking back. Raymond and Frank followed. 6 months later, February 2024, I made the decision to visit Derek one last time. I had not spoken to him since the sentencing. He had written 3 letters. I read them once, then locked them away. The Colorado Territorial Correctional Facility sat on the Eastern Plains, an hour from Denver. Gray concrete buildings, razor wire flat winter sky. I showed my ID, passed through security, and was escorted to a small visiting room with a bolted table and 2 plastic chairs. Derek was brought in minutes later. I barely recognized him. He had lost 20 pounds. His face hollow, cheekbones sharp. His hair, once dark and thick, was now streaked with gray, though he was only 34. He wore an orange jumpsuit with a number across the chest. His hands trembled as the officer removed his cuffs. We sat in silence. "I didn't think you'd come," he said, finally, voice hoarse. "I almost didn't," I replied. "I'm glad you did." He swallowed. "I know there's nothing I can say to make this right. I broke my promise to Mom. I broke everything." His voice cracked. "I betrayed you. I betrayed her memory." "Yes," I said quietly. "You did." He nodded, tears falling. "I think about her every day. What she would say if she knew. I can't live with it, Dad." I looked at him and saw not the man who had conspired against me, but the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the teenager I had driven to MIT, the son I had loved. Yet that boy was gone. The man before me was a stranger. "I can't come back here, Derek," I said steadily. "This is goodbye." His face crumpled. He nodded slowly. "I know. I hope you find peace, Dad. I hope you can be happy again." I stood. The officer stepped forward. I turned toward the door. "Dad." I paused but did not turn around. "Thank you," he said, voice breaking. "Just thank you for giving me life. I'm so sorry I tried to take yours." I closed my eyes briefly, then walked forward. The door buzzed open, locked behind me with a heavy clang. I walked out of that prison and never returned. That was the last time I saw my son. August 2024. 1 year after the trial. I made the decision to sell the house in Washington Park. There were too many memories trapped in those walls. Margaret's roses in the garden. Derek's childhood bedroom, the kitchen table where we had shared thousands of meals as a family. Every corner held a ghost. The house sold quickly for $680,000. I kept only a few things: Margaret's reading glasses, a photo album, and her favorite cardigan. I moved to Missoula, Montana to be closer to Frank Coleman. He had been my anchor through the darkest months, and I wanted to live near someone who understood. I bought a small log cabin on 3 acres at the base of the Bitterroot Mountains. It was quiet there. The only sounds were the wind in the pines, the occasional call of a hawk, and the creek that ran behind the property. For the first time in years, I could breathe, but the silence also brought the weight of everything I had lost. Some nights I woke up gasping, haunted by dreams of Derek's face in the courtroom or Margaret's voice asking me why I had not protected our son. I knew I needed help. I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Ellen Morris, a kind woman in her early 50s, who specialized in trauma and family betrayal. Her office was small and warm with soft lighting and a shelf full of books. In our first session, I told her I did not know how to move forward. She listened carefully, then said, "Henry, your son's betrayal does not define who you are. You are a survivor, and survivors have the right to heal." Her words stayed with me. Dr. Morris recommended I join a support group for people who had been betrayed by family members. I was reluctant at first, but I went. The group met every Thursday evening in the basement of a community center in Missoula. There were 8 of us, men and women of different ages, all carrying similar wounds. Listening to their stories, I realized I was not alone. There was a woman whose daughter had stolen her life savings, a man whose brother had framed him for a crime he did not commit. Their pain mirrored mine, and in that shared space I found a small measure of peace. Raymond Foster flew out to visit me twice a year. He would stay for a week each time, and we would spend our days hiking the trails around Missoula, fishing in the Clark Fork River, and talking late into the night. Raymond became more than the man who had saved my life. He became one of my closest friends. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains, I said, "You saved my life, Raymond." He smiled and shook his head. "I just listened to my gut, Henry. I'm glad I did." I began to live for the present. I volunteered at the Missoula Public Library 3 mornings a week, helping children with math and reading. Watching their faces light up when they solved a problem reminded me why I had become a teacher in the first place. I also started traveling again, something I had been afraid to do after what happened. I flew to New Zealand and hiked the Milford Track. I traveled to Iceland and stood beneath the northern lights, the sky swirling green and violet above me. These were places Margaret had always wanted to visit. I carried her memory with me, and in a strange way, it felt like we were seeing them together. Slowly, I learned how to smile again. I learned how to wake up in the morning without feeling crushed by grief. I learned that healing is not forgetting, it is choosing to keep living despite the scars. It's April 2025 now. I'm 65 years old, 2 years after that morning at the airport, and I'm finally healing. April 2025. I am 65 years old, sitting on the porch of my cabin in Montana. The mountains are still capped with snow and the morning air is cool and clean. I hold a mug of coffee and watch the sunlight spread across the valley. This is peace, real peace. People often ask if I have forgiven Derek. The truth is, I do not know. I still love him. He is still my son. But I cannot forget standing at that airport gate holding a boarding pass moments away from boarding a plane that would have carried me to my death. Some wounds do not heal completely. They scar over, and you learn to live with them. I have learned a painful truth: the people who can hurt you the most are the people you love the most. They know your vulnerabilities, your trust. When they exploit that trust, the betrayal cuts deeper than anything a stranger could inflict. Derek knew I would do anything for him. He used that knowledge to try to have me taken from this world. But life has also shown me beauty. Raymond Foster, a complete stranger, risked his own safety to warn me. He saw something wrong and acted. That simple act of courage restored my faith in humanity. For every person driven by greed, there is another driven by compassion. Raymond saved my life, not because he expected anything in return, but because it was the right thing to do. The greatest lesson I learned is about intuition. That morning at the airport, I felt something was wrong. Derek's hands trembled on the steering wheel. He avoided my eyes. His wife stood cold and distant. Every instinct told me something was not right. But I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things, that Derek was just nervous. I dismissed my gut feeling because I trusted him. That trust nearly cost me my life. Your intuition exists for a reason. It is a survival mechanism designed to protect you. When something feels off, when a voice whispers that you should be careful, listen to it. Do not ignore the warning signs even when they come from people you love. Those are the hardest warnings to accept and the most dangerous to ignore. If you ever feel something is wrong, if someone's behavior does not match their words, if a situation feels unsafe, trust that feeling. Ask questions. Seek help. Step back. It could save your life, and if you see someone else in danger, speak up. Be like Raymond. Do not assume someone else will intervene. A single act of courage can change everything. I think about Margaret every day. I know she would be heartbroken by what Derek did, grieving for the son who promised her on her deathbed that he would take care of me. But I also know she would be proud that I survived, that I chose to keep living, that I found a way to heal. Margaret taught me that love is not always soft. Sometimes love is fierce. Sometimes it is standing your ground and refusing to let betrayal destroy you. Sometimes it is choosing to testify because justice matters more than comfort. I testified not out of hatred, but out of commitment to the truth. If this story has touched you, share it. Someone might need to hear these words. Someone might be ignoring their instincts right now, dismissing warning signs, trusting when they should be cautious. If my pain can prevent even one person from suffering the same fate, then it was not in vain. Life is fragile, trust is precious, and intuition is a gift. I finish my coffee and set the mug down. The sun has climbed higher, warming the air. A hawk cries in the distance. I close my eyes and breathe deeply, feeling the weight of the past 2 years, not crushing me, but reminding me I am still here, still alive, still capable of hope. Trust your instincts. They might just save your life. Looking back at my family story, I realize how blind love can make us. I trusted, completely ignored every warning sign, and nearly paid with my life. My dad's revenge was not about hatred. It was about justice, about refusing to let betrayal define me. This family story taught me that even those closest to you can become strangers, driven by greed. My advice: don't be like me. Don't ignore your instincts when something feels wrong. I saw Derek's trembling hands, his avoiding eyes, Chelsea's cold calculations, but I dismissed them all because I wanted to believe in the best. That nearly killed me. Trust, yes, but verify. Love your family, but keep your eyes open. The signs are always there if you're willing to see them. This dad revenge story is not just mine, it's a warning. Financial desperation can turn good people into monsters. A $350,000 insurance policy became more valuable to my son than my life. That is the brutal reality of greed. Some might call testifying against my own son dad revenge, but I call it accountability. The lesson: protect yourself legally, emotionally, and spiritually. Guard your documents. Question sudden generosity. And most importantly, listen when God whispers warnings through your gut feelings. I believe the Lord put Raymond in my path that morning. A stranger became my guardian angel. From my family story, I learned that survival is not just physical. It's choosing to heal, to rebuild, to trust again, despite the scars. Forgiveness is complex. I may never fully forgive Derek, but I refuse to let bitterness consume what remains of my life. Thank you for walking this journey with me to the very end. Please drop a comment sharing your thoughts. What would you do if you found yourself in Henry's impossible situation, torn between a son's betrayal and a father's love? I genuinely want to hear your perspective. If this story resonated with you, emotionally consider subscribing so you won't miss future stories. A gentle note: while inspired by real-world themes of family betrayal and financial desperation, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this content doesn't align with your preferences, feel free to explore other videos that suit you better.